Hey, what is up people? This is Johnny and welcome to Pokemon Facts. In today's episode, we're going to go over some of the EVEE evolutions. The first Pokemon that we're going to be talking about is EVEE. Now, EVEE is the evolution Pokemon because it can evolve into several different Pokemon with different types. We're going to talk about the name origin of EVEE. EVEE has a name origin that actually relates to the word evolution, EV, and even in Japanese, EV are pronunciations of EV, which is the first two letters of the word evolution. Now we're going to talk a little bit about its origin of what this Pokemon may have been inspired to be drawn by. EVEE shares the traits of foxes or fennecs, dogs, and cats because of its tail. So it may have an inspiration from those animals to have the design of EVEE. Many of those animals that have tails. It also is possible that it is based off of a folklore called TANUKI. TANUKI is kind of like a fox. I believe they do exist in these animals as well. You can see the picture, they still exist. But in folklore, it is said that it was able to transform into an alternative type of animal called the raccoon dog in Japanese folklore, which is quite interesting. That's probably why they actually have a lot of evolutions with EVEE. Now when you look at the Pokédex entry of EVEE, it actually has some pretty cool, interesting talks about Pokemon, how this Pokemon actually changes. It talks about in the latest Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, EVEE has an unstable genetic makeup that suddenly mutates due to the environment in which it lives. Radiations from various stones cause this Pokemon to evolve. And this has been said throughout many of the Pokédex entries throughout the generations that this has an unstable genetic code. And it is very odd how EVEE actually reacts to the environment and just evolves into different Pokemon. Even though it seems that EVEE would be a Pokemon found in the wild, it is mostly found in cities and towns, which is quite interesting because this Pokemon can actually adapt to any environment in order to evolve into a Pokemon. The next Pokemon we're going to be talking about is Jolteon, the lightning Pokemon, and in Japanese translation it is called the Thunders. Now the name origin of Jolteon is a combination of Jolt and Eon, an immersively long period of time, possibly referring to how long evolution takes naturally. Eon is a suffix to all of the EVEE evolutions as well as its English prototype name. Now Thunders is literally what it means, thunder. Now the origin of this Pokemon, it is that it's like a herding dog or possibly a fox, or it has several traits of a coyote, and it has a resemblance to a cheetah as well because of its high speed. Also, it may have been inspired by a Japanese mythology creature called Raiju, a beast from the Japanese mythology whose body is actually made out of thunder, and it may actually take the form of a cat. Now believe it or not, the body of Jolteon actually doesn't really make a lot of electricity. What really causes this is the needles on its body. Those needles that get charged up, they get charged up to like up to 10,000 volts, and it's able to go ahead and use a thunderbolt on enemy Pokemon because it charges up those needles, enabling the Pokemon to drop some really serious damage, thunderbolts. The next Pokemon we're going to be talking about is Espeon, the sun Pokemon. Now, Espeon has its name in English and EIFIE in Japanese. Espeon is actually a combination of the ESP word, a branch of psychic abilities, and of course Eon as the evolutions for EVs. EIFIE is a combination of USPA in Japanese, which is a person with psychic powers, or referring to an extraordinary sensory abilities to a very similar EVEE, both writing and sound. Now the origin of the design of this Pokemon may actually be based off of a Japanese legend of the Nekomata, which is a very fork-tailed goblin cats, which look very weird when you look at the picture of the fork-tailed goblin cats. Now that is not only the origin that this may have had some inspiration. They may have had another inspiration of a Latin American mythological beast who had a jewel on its forehead, which is called the CARBUNCLE, which is pretty hard to pronounce, but it may have gotten the jewel that it has on its forehead from that mythology. So it's pretty interesting, and it also has the traits of different types of foxes, phoenix, cats, all types of other animals may have the traits of this Pokemon for an inspiration. Now, one of the interesting Pokédex entries that has said through many generations is in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. Espeon is extremely loyal to a trainer. It's considered to be worthy. It's said to be that this Pokemon developed its cognitive powers to protect a trainer from harm. So it's pretty loyal to the trainer, which is quite interesting of this Pokemon. Also, if you watching the Pokemon anime, this Pokemon can be found in the urban areas, but it's very rare. Now in the games, of course, you're not gonna actually find this Pokemon in the wild because it can't be done. You gotta evolve it somehow. Now for the next Pokemon, we're going to be talking about Umbreon, and Umbreon is the Moonlight Pokemon, and its translation in Japanese is Blacky. Now Blacky may be a combination of black and lucky, attributing to the black cat in Japan, which is considered lucky. It may also have referred to the color of the coat of this Pokemon. Now Umbreon in English is a combination of Umbron for the shadow and ghost, as well as the name for the moon silhouette during a solar eclipse. Now the Eon may actually be for EVE evolution as well again. And now the origins of Umbreon may not seem uncertain. It's very different. It's very odd. There's not really a great origin, but if you look at the design, there is an inspiration of ancient Egypt, because it has these rings around it which make it look something kind of like the Egyptian lunar markings, and the jewelry that's being associated with the animals and the sculptures from Egypt, from statues of Jackal God and Anubis. It also resembles the solar eclipse. Now another thing that you may actually see an origin from this Pokemon is definitely from a black cat or a black fox, because that's kind of like where it got its design. In many of the Pokédex entries, it says that once this Pokemon gets exposed by the moon, it actually starts getting a couple of more energy for its body and making it thus stronger of a Pokemon in order to get more power and energy to attack its opponent. Now one of the Pokemon Pokédex entries like Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire say Umbreon evolved as a result of the exposure of the moon waves. It hides silently in darkness and waits for its foes to make a move. The rings on its body glows when it leaps to attack, which is pretty interesting. Well, that will be all for the Pokemon facts for today. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comment section which was your favorite Pokemon EVE evolution fact. Also, if you haven't checked out some of my previous videos, make sure to click on those two boxes in the middle to go ahead and go check them out.